eyes on Wesley versus Magnus, which should start momentarily. And it started E4. They're off. Wesley looked like he got up for a second. Maybe it's Zanzibar trying to
big game for Magnus, as indeed, while Wesley may be looking for his lucky cat Zanzibar, it's Magnus who's shown himself to be a cat with 9 lives in some of these games. Extraordinary that he survived and even won the games as well. Not just survive and draw, survive and win the game. Amazing that he's done this.
I felt kind of bad for his opponents because not only do they lose the game at the end after so many chances, but then you have to see Magnus's reaction, which is like a vigorous shaking of his head. I don't know if they see that, actually. I don't know if they see that. That's the difference with online chess. But what's up with this opening? We just see this beautiful
all theories so far.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen
just a slight pull for white.
Yeah, Bishop F4, Rook E1, Knight D2. Just
why not a big pull? Why is this not a big deal having this weak D pawn to play against?
You're sorry.
No, I'm asking you. Like, is this like okay. Why isn't this? Because you say it's theory, so like, why is this not a serious?
Well, I mean, there are
counterplay.
It's a Satarash. Yeah, no, there's a Satarash line in the French defense where you get an isolated queen pawn on D5. Like white plays knight D2 and you go C5 and takes. And the isolated queen pawn actually isn't that bad. Victor Korchnoi, for example, defended that endgame quite a number of years in his career. 1973 candidates match against Anatoly Karpov. Remember that one?
And now we see weaknesses for white as well, as bishop takes F3, pawn takes F3. So it's not just that weak pawn on B5 anymore.
Right.
Does white have anything anymore? It's got the 2 bishops, but,
those will be off the board in a moment.
I tend to think that white is a little bit better. This bishop on C2 is really good, and you can play rook, double your rooks. Bishop takes E3, F takes E3 really kind of helps a little bit.
That's why I think that black kind of has to let those 2 bishops live, because bishop takes E3, F takes E3, straightening out my pawns would be met with welcome arms.
Except you still do have this guy on H2, so you are still a little bit split. I mean, again, black's the one, nursing this pretty weak guy in the middle of the board there on D5. But okay, there are other things going on in the position too, like A5, A4, D5, B4, and play. So if I were black, I would probably take and play a move like G6 and say, okay, go ahead and play against my D5 pawn. Let's see how you're gonna attack it.
Magnus, meanwhile, is thinking they both played very quickly, so no time
they have
the offing yet.
Yeah, they played. In fact, which game was it? Was it Wesley versus Hikaru where they almost had 6 minutes on their clock? It was like, my goodness, they were playing
that was So versus Nakamura, the last game.
Yes,
was a draw. Okay, so Magnus is thinking here, presumably because it's like often a time to think when you have this option of exchanging that will completely change the character of the position. You'll see, great players think a lot when there are options like that. Despite this being a blitz game, he's been in the tank for a minute. Yes.
I think the other problem to me is that there is no ready plan. Ready meaning READY, as opposed to Richard ready. There's nothing that's just obvious. But he's played this move D4, deciding to sacrifice this pawn in order to get to hammer away at the pawn, also to blockade. That's a very big decision that he felt he needed to do.
Yeah, all right. I would have probably play G6, King G7, and look to bring my king into the center of the board. I don't like this decision at all.
I
In
like the
fact,
way Maurice described it, though. It's like you have a weak pawn, so you sacrifice it, so your opponent has a weak pawn, but you're down a pawn. I know, yeah, I
good.
love that idea.
Good point. What? Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's 2-result game. Why you want to embrace a 2-result game?
But can you round it up by force, maybe? Like with knight c6, knight b4, all these like forcing moves coming up, like rook d4, okay, rook d4, pawn d4, rook d8, rook d1, knight c6, d5, knight b4. Like, what's happening there?
Knight b4, bishop
I would maybe
b3.
go-
Oh, you're wait, but I have knight d4 here, bishop b7, knight e2 check.
Knight e2 check. That's right.
Yeah. It's
Well,
not like you to give up your pawn. So d5.
What was wrong with d5? What was wrong with
Yeah,
d5?
I was thinking d5, knight b4, but
b4.
you're right. There's just bishop b4. There's just bishop b3 there, and you are holding on to both of your pawns now. So that would be a bad move.
Big threat of a3 as well.
Yeah. So instead of that,
Well, let's just
I could probably
catch
play
up.
knight e5. But okay, I see what you're saying. I mean, this pawn is not going to be trivial to regain.
Well, but
He
again,
played
I
something
mean,
different, though. He didn't play rook d1. He played bishop e4 straight away.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, isn't it a 2-result game?
Well, f5 on the board, forcing the
Why-
bishop backwards. And we're back to this potential structure again with knight c6, which will force the move d5. Bishop b1?
Huh?
Oh, I guess his point was he didn't want his bishop to be attacked, but that's bizarre. Bishop
Now
b1.
immediately, Magnus immediately played king to f7.
What is the bishop doing? Okay.
I think he was avoiding a potential knight hunt in a
Unfortunately,
couple of moves,
also,
but still
here's the
strange.
problem, though. It's what the bishop is not doing on b1. Because now when you try my ideas of knight c6, you're not going to be able to play d5, knight b4, bishop b3, right? So that seemed like a wasted time. And we got our
Totally.
king up to f6.
A real waste of time. If White is going to win this game, he's really made it hard on himself. Bishop a2, knight c6, d5, knight e5. All
Dark
played on the
squares.
board. King
Dark
g2.
squares look so
Everything was
weak.
played.
I want to play g5 and knight g6 as a plan. G5, knight g6, knight f4, and dare you to win that position.
Now, what Black's thinking about winning some positions, you know, get that knight into f4, sneak your rook over. But okay, let's see. Is this going to be another situation where Wesley maybe offers a draw? Will Magnus take it here?
I doubt it.
We've seen him a couple of times. It seems like we didn't find out the story for sure about Naka, but it seemed to me that maybe Wesley offered a draw.
Ah, yeah, that's a good.
I had
that
a
was an open
feeling.
question. As to what
Yeah.
happened in that game.
I just
Exactly.
kind of assume it's that way because Wesley was involved in another draw, I think, around prior, so it just seems more likely.
Whoa,
Draw.
draw.
And I was right. Okay, gosh, they have drawn. Again, it seems like Wesley's involved in too many cases of these inexplicable draws. It must be that he's offering it, right?
Yeah.
But let's
Let's-
take a look at
let's
Nakamura's
jump.
game. And okay, I mean, there we go.